Hello, and welcome to today's webinar, Smarter Care Starts at Home, Innovations in AI-Enabled Tools for the Future of Home-Based Care. I'm Morgan Gonzalez, the Associate Editor of Home Healthcare News. Thanks so much for joining us today. Before we get started, I'll review a couple of housekeeping notes. You'll see a variety of boxes on your screen. These can be moved and resized to meet your preferences. A couple of boxes to note. The resources box has today's presentation slides and any additional resources related to today's webinar. The Q&A box is where you can ask questions during our webinar. We will have a Q&A session at the end of the webinar, but feel free to ask your questions as they come to you, even if you're watching on demand. If you are watching this webinar on demand, please still submit your questions and our presenters will get back to you. A recording of this webinar will be available on demand at Home Healthcare News website. If you happen to run into any technical issues during the webinar, first try refreshing your browser, and then if the problem persists, please reach out to us through the Q&A box. I'd like to thank Homecare Homebase for sponsoring this webinar. And now I'd like to introduce today's speakers. We have with us Kelly Murray, Director, Innovation and New Services at Homecare Homebase, and Michelle Barlow, Director of Clinical and Regulatory Excellence, Homecare Homebase. Before I hand this over to Kelly and Michelle, we'll start by checking in with a poll question. The question we have to start things off is, if automation and AI tools could solve one intake challenge for your agency, which would be the most valuable? So please feel free to start answering this question. I'll go through each of these answers. Reducing manual work and data entry, improving referral and acceptance speed, increasing visibility and reporting, enhancing communication across teams, and ensuring compliance and documentation accuracy. I'll read that question one more time as folks start to answer that question. If automation and AI tools could solve one intake challenge for your agency, which would be the most valuable? Please take a moment now to answer that question. Okay, great. We're starting to get some responses, and in just a second, I'll show what folks are saying. So let's see. Reducing manual work and data entry is by far and away the winner of the poll. Thanks, everybody. And then without further ado, I'll hand it over to you, Kelly.
Sounds great. Thank you. And thank you all for submitting your answers to our poll. You know, I read recently that the worst large language model that we use is the one that we're using today. And that's because artificial intelligence is accelerating at that fast of a pace. But the speed of change opens the door to a lot of different opportunities, as well as I'm sure you all are feeling a lot of uncertainties. And for that reason, I'm really excited to dive more into this use case. We'll definitely talk through about how it can speed up manual work and manual documentation, but also excited to lean into AI more broadly, in addition to other technologies that will provide additional opportunities for improvement. I'll focus on intake, which has the opportunity to truly set up scheduling, clinician documentation, and patient outcomes for success. And then I will pass it over to Michelle to focus in on the evolution of clinical care. So if your intake team feels like they're juggling faxes, emails, and portals just to keep up, you are not alone. Referral management has quietly become a significant pressure point in home-based care. So we'll start our conversation today by grounding ourselves in what's happening across the market. We'll remind ourselves why home-based care is under more pressure than ever. I'm sure you all know this information very well. But then we'll start to unpack the hidden costs of manual intake and the friction it creates for agencies and our patients. And then from there, we'll look at technology shifts that are reshaping how agencies manage our referrals. And I'll share certain solutions, including some we're building at Homecare Homebase, and how they're helping organizations get ahead of these changes. Finally, we'll close with key takeaways And by the end, I hope you'll have a clear picture of the future of intake and how we can all build systems that are faster, more compliant, and more connected. So let's start by taking a step back and thinking about the big picture. The market forces shape how we deliver care at home. Home health is one of the best, most cost-effective and patient-centered models of care. I'm sure you all know this very well. Patients heal faster, families prefer it, and payers see a lower total cost of care. But despite its value, the environment around us is tightening. And it feels like we've been hearing this same message for probably the past handful of years, which makes those impacts feel even more real. So referral volumes are rising as hospitals are discharging sooner and the population ages, which is leaving home health with sicker patients that require even more care at home. All at the same time, we're facing workforce shortages and gaps with our nurses and shrinking reimbursements. We're finally seeing Medicare Advantage making up now over half of all Medicare lives, impacting agencies' bottom line even more, resulting in tight margins and difficulty staying profitable. Finally, the share of referrals that agencies can actually accept is continuing to decline. So right now, as you see, we have 76% of referrals going unaccepted. And that's still a pretty dramatic change from just a few years ago. And it tells us something important. Hospitals and health systems are sending more referrals than ever, but agencies don't have the bandwidth, the tools, or the insight to process them. So we don't have a problem of not having enough referrals to care for. We actually have too many referrals, which begs the question of who are we accepting, who are we declining, and what opportunities do we have for better payer contracts? And I want to be clear that that 76% of referrals going unaccepted, that's not our conversion ratio. That's not once we've determined that we can care for that patient. That's kind of that upfront number prior to that conversion. And this imbalance between rising demand and limited capacity is creating unprecedented intake pressure because that's where this bottleneck all starts. It's where decisions are made. And so that's why it's so important today to lean into intake and how we can really set you all up for success in this space. So manual intake is more than just an inconvenience. It really is costing our agencies time, revenue, and patient outcomes as well, which we'll get into. So I'd like to start with time. Most agencies are managing their referrals through a mix of very disparate systems. So you're likely logging into multiple hospital portals, you're receiving referrals via faxes, maybe emails, or maybe you have some growth representatives on site within your hospital systems that you're partnered with. And each referral, once you receive that referral, it takes a significant amount of time to then process manually. Most of that time is parsing through large patient packets, making sure you can gather basic data, track down missing documents, and oftentimes we're actually leaving a lot of the most valuable data behind in those lengthy packets for our clinicians to review. So instead of just pulling out demographics, location information, how can we pull out more of that clinical content to really set up our clinicians for success? Next, when we get into patient care, when intake is slow, care starts late, right? That's where we can see delays in patient care. And it has a real clinical impact. A study by the Journal of the American Medical Directors Association found that 34% of start of care visits are delayed, and 18% of those delays are due to administrative or scheduling issues. And with that information, we also know that a decrease or delay increases the risk of hospitalization by about 12%. So it's not just a metric, that's a patient that could end up back in the hospital instead of safely starting care at home. So it's really important that that intake process is seamless and moved through the system as quickly as possible to set up that patient for safe care in their home. Finally, intake also has impacts on our revenue, right? So every delay or missed referral equals a lost admission. That could mean delayed billing. It could mean reduced visibility into what's really in the pipeline. You know, how many agencies truly understand which referrals are being accepted or declined today? It's really hard to keep track of that information because we have so many disparate systems. So we lose sight of who we're accepting, who we're declining, which then makes it difficult to make business decisions off of that information, right? If we were to expand into a different service line, how many patients are we declining today because we're not certified in that area? What would it look like if we made those changes? So really the bottom line here is that manual processes create a drag on every part of the business. And the more we can set up upfront, the more we can set up downstream positive impacts for our schedulers, making sure that we've optimized our schedules, for our clinicians, making sure that they go into the home with the right information easily available to them, as well as to the billing team. The good news, though, is that technology to fix this already exists, and it's evolving pretty quickly. We often think of intake as something we do, but I really want to shift our focus and our view today that intake is now something we can leverage. So using intake to build analytics and leverage the artificial intelligence, intake can become a decision engine and not just a pipeline. So with that, I'd love to dive into the technology. So technology is finally catching up with the complexity of home-based care. And we're really seeing three shifts reshaping how we think about referral management. First off is our interoperability. So for years, hospitals and home health systems have operated in silos. You know, we talked about, we've got those faxes, emails, separate portals, but now we're finally seeing new FHIR and API standards enabling referral data to move more seamlessly between systems. And we're really seeing referral systems build into these APIs. And that results in fewer missed faxes, fewer manual reentries, and faster starts of care. It's truly the foundation of a connected referral network, right? Let's try and maintain as much of the data that already exists digitally today, maintain that in its digital format, so we can reduce the amount of manual documentation that's taking place. But improved interoperability is actually more than just faster intake. It also represents a more connected intake. So we're seeing 360X or closed loop referrals starting to take off. I'm really excited about this. This is where the data flows both ways. So referral source and agency can now share status updates and provide a more seamless handoff. It's really where the next level of competitive advantage lies in creating a continuous feedback loop. So the agency is able to dictate the information required to initiate a referral, and the referral source is then dictating the information they want to receive in order to monitor and manage that referral. Personally, that's the level of coordination I would want for my own care and for my loved one's care. So it's about time that we're able to offer that. And not to mention that this type of care coordination doesn't only just drive better care coordination, but it also drives trust with our referral sources. And that's what allows us to kind of become that preferred partner status by making sure that we're constantly updating that referral source with the information that they're looking for. Another piece of exciting progress on the interoperability is our access to health information exchange network. So this is via frameworks like Care Quality and TEFCA, the Trusted Exchange Framework and Common Agreement, to increase our care coordination and interoperability to, again, reduce delays in patient data exchange. So what this allows for is, instead of us reaching out to a referral source for them to send their discharge notes or their most recent history and physical, we're actually able to query across this network and pull that information into the system on our own. So again, this is really about setting that clinician up for success when they get in that home. If we have a more complete understanding of that patient's past clinical history, that clinician has even more content in a summarized way, and we'll get into that with AI and automation. But if we're able to streamline that information, we're really able to set that clinician up for success. With that, we'd love to move into artificial intelligence. So AI is no longer futuristic. You all are probably using it to some extent, but it's actively being used today to extract key data from referral packets. We're identifying missing documentation with it and predicting referral scheduling needs such as urgency or hospitalization risk. And what used to take 30 minutes of review can now happen in seconds. And with much more accuracy and full audibility, So there's a lot of different things we can do with artificial intelligence within intake. A couple things that come to mind is we can identify and alert team members of patient risks. We can enable agents to provide insight into the status and why a patient might be held up. I know a lot of teams oftentimes meet at the beginning of the day or the end of the day to review their pending list. Well, now we can use AI to help guide those conversations. So we're really making the most use of that time. Or what if AI could guide payer contracting teams and which payers need updated contracts because we're actively serving their patient population and keeping them out of the hospital? There's a lot of really interesting and fun things we can do with AI in the intake space. Finally is automation and orchestration. Our intake teams are spending hours every day on routine administrative work. They're checking eligibility, validating documents, and assigning tasks. And workflow automation in combination with artificial intelligence is really where we unlock a lot of value. We can now handle a lot of the intake process automatically, freeing up your staff for clinical coordination and high-touch work that truly requires that human judgment. This is also where we can see true optimization of the referrals that are accepted in order to optimize our clinician schedules, so we're reducing drive times, so we can ultimately care for more patients. If your intake data could predict your start of care capacity 2 days from now based on changing discharge dates or upcoming referral volume, how would that enable you to change your staffing, scheduling, and acceptance decisions? So these are the types of questions that we're starting to ask ourselves and that AI enables us to ask ourselves. Or perhaps let's imagine a world where the moment a referral is sent, it's auto-categorized, it's checked for eligibility, and the intake team can see at a glance which referrals are high priority, need to be worked first, and the intake team is then set up for success to do so, to catch errors, to reduce that duplication. So really the moral of the story here is if you're still doing intake like it's 2015, you're leaving hours and opportunities on the table. These technologies, interoperability, automation, and AI together turn intake from a manual inbox into that intelligent connected system that we were talking about. So what happens when you combine these technologies with deep industry understanding? That's where we get solutions that Homecare Homebase is building, like Intake Central, come into play. And so I'd love to quickly walk us through what that looks like. So these market and technology changes point to one critical need. We need a single connected entry point for all of our referrals. And that's what we've built within Intake Central. So we call it your digital front door to Homecare Homebase because it truly unifies every referral source that you manage today, whether it's coming through a portal, a direct secure message, or a fact. Everything can now come into one centralized workspace. And then from there, Intake Central can handle the heavy lifting. It automates referral capture using OCR and artificial intelligence. It helps document, classify documents to make sure that we're tracking them appropriately, and automates the eligibility verification. On top of that, it then provides intelligent task management and built-in communication tools, so your team doesn't need to chase information down by email or Teams messages. We're actually presenting you with the information when you need it, when you need to get involved. And with AI-powered data management, you'll get better accuracy and real-time visibility across the entire referral pipeline. So for agencies, that means fewer missed referrals, faster turnaround, or more consistent quality of care. And for leadership, it means visibility and confidence in your intake operations. We really have seen intake today as kind of this black box due to the disparate systems. And Intake Central is helping shed light on the decisions that we're already making today and making sure that we're making data-driven decisions. Intake Central is our centralized mobile-friendly intake dashboard. It's designed to unify referral management, automate manual work, and give agencies total visibility into their incoming pipeline. And so as part of this, we've really focused on 3 different outcomes. We want to make sure that we're providing the intake teams with speed, accuracy, and insight. And so with automation and orchestration built in, agencies can save 50% on referral entry time. That's cutting the manual work in half. And by applying AI-powered business rules and decision support, they can reduce the time it takes to make an acceptance decision by 20%. These are the results that we've seen in our pilot alone. So we anticipate these results to improve even more significantly as we go live with more feature functionality within the application. But the result here is truly a streamlined process that empowers intake teams to act faster and more confidently, and it ensures compliance and gives leaders the real-time visibility that they've been asking for. So like I said, Intake Central is in an early pilot stage today, and it's set to launch in early 2026. And our goal is simple: to make intake as connected, efficient, and intelligent as the rest of your care operations. So when you put it all together, the market pressure, the cost of manual intake, and the technology evolution, it all points towards one thing: transforming intake. So let's close with a few key takeaways before I pass it to Michelle to dive into evolving clinical care. So if you remember three things from the intake portion of the conversation, I want you to remember that first, the market is changing faster than ever. Referral volume is soaring, but our resources aren't. This is, like I said, probably not a surprise to anyone on this call. But agencies, because of this, agencies that modernize intake will really be positioned to win. Manual intake isn't just slow, it's costly, it delays care, it drains staff time, and really hides opportunities. So lastly, technology is finally ready. It's here to help. Through interoperability, automation, and artificial intelligence, we can really eliminate a lot of manual chaos and focus on what really matters: getting patients into care faster. We really believe that the agencies that embrace these tools won't just survive these market shifts, they'll become go-to partners for hospitals, hospitals and referral sources that are searching for a fast, reliable home care transition. I feel like, prior to this, automation was probably really the key buzzword. But today it's combination between automation and artificial intelligence, making it really about intelligent systems that not only execute, but they anticipate. So we're entering into this era of predictive connected intake, where referrals don't just arrive, they complete that digital loop, that closed loop referral, updating referral sources in real time. And that's how agencies will differentiate themselves in 2026 and beyond. And that's also the vision behind Intake Central, is to help agencies reclaim time, revenue, and confidence in every referral. Please, if you have any questions, please feel free to put those into the Q&A below, and we'll make sure to answer those afterwards. But with that, I would love to pass it off to Michelle to dive into the evolution of clinical care.
Thank you, Kelly. I sure wish I had Intake Central when I was running multiple agencies. What a great product. So thank you for that time. So another audience participation part. What would you most want AI to do for your clinical team? Reduce time spent on administrative tasks, improve risk prediction, support compliance and documentation, or streamline communication and scheduling? Please take a minute to answer this poll question for me. I'm really excited to hear what you all have to say. So what would you most want AI to do for your clinical teams? If you're like me, I wish there was an E there that said all of the above, but gonna make you pick. Thank you. I see the responses coming in. Give you a little bit more time. Okay, let's give you one more time. What would you most want AI to do for your clinical team? All right, thank you for those who have answered. Let's see what, reduce time spent on administrative tasks and support compliance and documentation. Perfect, thank you for answering that. So, we all feel it. We're constantly being asked to do more with less. A start of care can take over 3 hours, and that's on top of everything else our clinicians are juggling. The patients we're seeing are more complex, their acuity is higher, and the pressure for quality and efficiency, it just keeps growing. What we really need are tools that don't just collect data, but make sense of it, that help our clinicians get to what matters most, caring for their patients. I've actually lived through this evolution of clinical practice. I started out as an RN case manager in the field when charting was manual. Please don't do the math. Back then, we did our best to practice proactive care, but most of the time, if I'm being honest, we were reacting to whatever was right in front of us. And we made those decisions on our own. Today, we have digital records, predictive insights, and access to data that supports decision making. But what excites me the most is where we're headed next. With AI-assisted workflows, we can finally help clinicians practice preventative care, supported by evidence-based best practice and intelligent partnerships that enhance, not replace, clinical judgment. What if we could take everything we already know about our patients, their vitals, clinical notes, and their comorbidities, and use it to predict who's at risk for hospitalization before it happens? That's exactly what we're doing with Predict, our machine learning for hospitalization prediction model. This model continuously analyzes real-time patient data to identify those most at risk within a defined time frame. Instead of having to rely solely on your manual clinical judgment or waiting for lagging indicators, we can now surface early warning signs automatically. That means our clinicians can act sooner. They can prioritize high-risk patients, they can adjust the care plan, or schedule check-ins before the crisis occurs. It really transforms care from reactive to proactive, helping patients stay where they want to be, safe and stable at home. And at the end of the day, this isn't about replacing clinical judgment. It's about enhancing it. AI becomes a second set of eyes, helping clinicians focus their time and expertise where it makes the biggest impact. When I was in the field, I always wish I had my own personal assistant. With this technology, our clinicians are going to feel like they have one. How wonderful would it be to have your schedule optimized and your route planned so that you didn't have all that extra windshield time, but you had more time with your patients? Imagine going home at the end of the day with all of your documentation completed because you had an AI scribe assisting you during the visit. You can just imagine how happy the patients would have been to see me spending my face-to-face time with them instead of my face stuck in my tablet. But most importantly for me is having those insights given to me in real time. I always felt awful when one of my patients went into the hospital. I would relive the last few visits and ask myself, what did I miss? Having access to risk trends and being alerted may have prevented many avoidable hospitalizations. When I think about doing a start of care, my biggest nightmare was always the shoebox of medications. Y'all know what I'm talking about. How big was it going to be and how many meds were going to be in that box? We all know how time-consuming it is to enter medications manually. With Curate Medications, we're surfacing the most recent accurate list directly from the referral, turning medication entry into validation. I've used this tool myself, and it saved me a significant amount of time. Now, imagine pairing that with an AI scribe that populates documentation fields straight from your voice. That would be another major time saver. And with Predict, our machine learning model, we can identify which patients are high, medium, or low risk for hospitalization, giving us data-driven insight to prioritize care, especially when staffing changes happen unexpectedly. Imagine someone calling in sick and your scheduler knowing exactly which patients to prioritize first. Add in optimized scheduling and routing, and you may feel like you've won the lottery. We all know how difficult it is to attract and retain great clinicians, and how costly it can be when we lose them. I read a recent study that said the average cost to replace one staff RN is about $56,000. That is a lot of money. Imagine if we give them back time with their patients, we reduce redundant clicks and data entry, and give them decision support in real time, allowing them to practice at the top of their license. That's sure to reduce burnout. But I'm going to caution you that introducing AI into clinical practice will require some change management. So be prepared for that. Some of your clinicians will embrace it enthusiastically, while others are going to feel a little bit apprehensive at first. What's most important is helping them understand that AI isn't replacing the great care that they provide. It's actually supporting it. It's not going to replace empathy. It's going to protect it by lightening their cognitive load and giving clinicians more time and mental space to focus on their patients. The new clinical ecosystem will have AI as the backbone of the modern care team. It's going to bring together all of the disciplines and create a shared visibility into risk, workload, and outcomes. And the best part about AI is it continues to learn and improve as our care data grows. And that truly makes my nursing heart happy. My goal has always been to help as many patients as possible age in place. And now we finally have the tools to make that a reality. The strategic payoff is simple. Smarter workflows, empowered clinicians equal better outcomes. AI isn't just an innovation, it's our investment in empowering exceptional care. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Michelle. That was fascinating. I really appreciate it. I'll jump in now. We'll have another poll question, and then we'll get into our Q&A. We'd like to know, what's the biggest obstacle to adopting AI or automation tools in your agency? I'll go over each of these responses. We'd love to know your answer. Our options include budget or resource constraints, staff resistance to change, data security and compliance concerns, unclear ROI or value, and uncertainty about technical capabilities. I'll read that question one more time, and then we'll go over the results once folks start getting in their answers. The question is, what's the biggest obstacle to adopting AI or automation tools in your agency? Nice. Thanks, y'all, for answering that question. I'll give just one more second. All righty. Let's see what the top answer was. Looks like budget or resource constraints was that top answer. Other concerns are unclear ROI or value, and data security and compliance concerns. Okay, great. Thank you all for answering that. With that, let's dive into some Q&A. I can see that some questions have already been submitted, but if you haven't had the chance to submit your question, please do so now using the Q&A box. Let's see, getting some great questions in. To start, we have a question. What factors is AI technology looking at to predict risk? That's an interesting question. Kelly or Michelle, can one of y'all take that?
I can go ahead and take that. So for the hospital prediction, it's actually looking at your data and looking at your transfer to inpatient facility and basically coming up with a plan that looks at your patients that went back into the hospital. So it's looking at demographics, it's looking at age, it's looking at sex, it's looking at comorbidities, it's looking at the OASIS questions. So it's a combination of a bunch of different factors, but it's based on your own data, which is super helpful.
Perfect. And then Kelly, I have one that I think you'll be the best person to answer. Is this similar to what Forcura does? Someone asked.
Yeah, there are some similarities, but there's also a lot of differences. So Forcura primarily sends fax documents and is a repository for fax documents. But there's also other referrals being received from different spots. So we integrate with Forcura. That's an option. So we've got lots of different options in how we can set it up. So there's definitely a lot of differences in terms of what we're offering, but there are some overlaps as well.
Perfect. Thanks, Kelly. Another one for you. We have some questions about IC. Here's a question. Does IC sit outside of the core EMR solution as originally scoped?
Yep, that is correct. Intake Central is set up as a staging database. So it's really that spot where you can receive all referrals, even if they're not truly going to become a patient. So that's where you have that better insight in terms of, can we actually care for this patient? Can we accept them, or do we need to decline them? Maybe they're out of service area, maybe there's no contract with that payer, whatever it might be. And that gives you that broader scope of data to then say, do we have the right business rules? Can we expand our business? Should we be adjusting to ultimately care for more patients? So it does sit outside, but it is also fully integrated. We're able to then store all of that data inside of the customer database. So there's a lot of benefits of kind of having that disconnected but connected architecture.
Okay, great. And then I think another follow-up on that same topic, how does IC integrate with smart scheduling? And if this feature is not available, when will you introduce this functionality?
Yeah, so we are super excited to integrate Intake Central and Smart Scheduling together. That's coming in 2026. Today, there's some elements of integration in the sense that when you are inputting your referral, you can select your care team, and the information, Intake Central is always connected to your database. So your care team flows over. If your care team is connected to Smart Scheduling, that setting will flow over, and you could turn that on or off if you needed to change something. But in 2026, what we'll see is the ability to connect them so you could automate your start of care, but also so you can have really intelligent insights on your capacity to determine not only can you care for that patient from the start of care visit, but can you care for that patient for follow-up visits as well? Do you have that capacity?
Great, thank you. And thank you all for your questions. Please keep them coming. Another one is this a voice to text implementation?
It is not. It's an ambient scribe.
Thank you. And then another question for Kelly. Can you provide the audience with a high-level roadmap of functionality for IC in 2026 and beyond?
Yeah, of course. And whoever reached out with this question, if you do have further questions on roadmap, I know there was also a question on demos. If you want to reach out to Homecare Homebase, we'd be happy to provide the details of that or provide that demo. 2026 is where really a lot of these pieces that I talked about and the excitement around emerging technology really all come together. And so I'd be happy to share that in more specifics, but that's really what you'll see in 2026. And we're excited to get that launched and available to all of you.
Great. How often is AI content filtered or validated for bias, accuracy, and security drift?
Michelle, I'm happy to take a stab at this one if you want to weigh in as well. But really, with how we're implementing artificial intelligence is requiring that auditable tracing and human confirmation that the data we have is accurate and correct. So really, with all of these pieces, whether it be intake or showing it to the clinician, we're really always making sure that it's presented alongside the original information. So that way we're constantly monitoring and checking. And like I started in the beginning, the worst large language model that you're going to use is the one you're using today. And that's true for our artificial intelligence as well. We have our data science team consistently improving the systems that we're using, the prompts that we're using, and you'll see that as well in the technology.
I know I for sure noticed the AI is a lot better just in the last year or so. So exciting stuff there. Another question for whoever wants to take it. The question reads, in the second part of the presentation, you alluded to the idea of AI being a scribe in the visit. Is this something that will be deeply integrated into HCHB, where questions that are required to be answered are able to be preloaded based on the home conversation? Is this kind of integration something HCHB is moving towards or relying on third parties to build?
Don't have the exact answer to that question, but we certainly can get back to you with the details.
Perfect. Thanks, Michelle. And then we'll keep trucking along. Thank you all for your questions. Here's another one. How exactly does the AI model predict hospitalization risk, and how are false positives avoided?
So the predict hospitalization model is looking at those high risk factors for the patients. It's looking at their medications, it's looking at their diagnoses, all of their comorbidities, and even at the clinical notes. And so it is a machine learning model. So sometimes there's going to be some false positives, but the machine learning model will learn as it goes along. The purpose of this tool really is just to bring to light those patients who might be at medium to high risk for hospitalization, so that the clinicians can use their clinical judgment based on that factor being brought to their eyes. Is this something that I need to intervene? Team collaboration is super important during this process. Am I doing the right things to keep this patient out of the hospital? Do I need to add in check-ins? Is the patient, taking their medications the way that they're supposed to? So it's really a way to bring it to the surface, to the clinician, so that they can use their clinical judgment to make sure that they're meeting all of the needs of the patient and keeping them out of the hospital.
Perfect. Thank you. And how exactly does the AI model, I just asked that one, and you answered it great. Thank you. Okay, do these products integrate with other EMRs, or do you need to be on Homecare Homebase?
You need to be on Homecare Homebase.
And one we just got in, is this utilized in point care and in the back office? Will it be easily navigated for people who are not tech savvy? I associate with that question.
So our product for medication entry, Curate, will actually start in point care, and then it will bring you over to the Progressive web app, where you'll have a much more wonderful experience. Same with our hospitalization predict. So you will actually start in point care and then move over to the Progressive web app, Care Plus, and complete the information in there, and it will flow back to the back office and kick off workflow as well.
Perfect. And then I have some questions too. I'd love to know, how do you ensure AI supports clinicians rather than replacing their judgment?
That's such a great question, and honestly one that I love answering. Our whole philosophy at Homecare Homebase is that AI should support clinicians, not replace them. It's there to take away some of the busy work, right, and surface insights that make things faster for them and give them better informed decisions, but it's never meant to replace their clinical judgment. Think of it as a co-pilot. It helps point out what might need attention, but you're still the one flying the plane. The goal is to lighten the cognitive load, not limit your autonomy, so that you have more time and mental space to do what we were trained to do, which is care for our patients.
Right. Do you provide your solution outside of the US?
No.
And then, Kelly, were you going to say something?
No, sorry, I was saying no as well. There's just a delay.
Thank you. And then, could the AI tool you are developing, this is another question from the audience, could the AI tool you are developing be able to have a conversation with the clinician pre and post visit, updating them on recent happenings and reviewing possible holes or things not addressed in the documentation from the visit just completed?
That's another one we're going to have to get back to you on.
Yeah, I think the Homecare Homebase team is really excited about opportunities to deploy agents for our customers to use, but that's still in progress and works.
And how long does it take to get automated intake up and running at HCHB?
Automated intake or Intake Central is a really fast process to get up and running. We have developed client-led enablement for this tool. So what that means is it really gives you the resources and tools to make changes, whether it be for building to start to get it up and running, or you're making updates to your process later down the road. You have an admin console where you can kind of fully customize it on your own. So it's a really quick process.
And how does Intake Central handle interoperability across multiple EMRs or referral sources?
Yep, so we have a handful of different tools to enable the interoperability. So we've got the Health Information Exchange Network that we talked about earlier. We will be connecting with 360X referrals later this year. We're receiving faxes. We have connected into a data pipeline that provides standardized APIs. And then we offer direct secure messages. So there's really a whole host of different opportunities to connect, which makes it flexible based on your referral source's primary mode of referring.
Great. And someone asked, what is the timeline for this tool to be launched in home health specifically?
Maybe we answer this separately. We'll go Intake Central first, and then Michelle, you can talk through your two pieces. So for Intake Central, we're live with a pilot today. We're looking for early 2026 for broader availability, and excited to offer that for both home health and hospice.
Curate and Predict are both in the pilot stages right now. So, and the AI Scribe is probably going to be more towards 26.
Perfect. And someone else just asked about timing, so I think that answers it. I'd also love to know, does Homecare Homebase recommend what actions to take with the hospitalization risk ratings?
That's a great question. Homecare Homebase doesn't actually prescribe specific visit actions for hospitalization risk ratings. The Predict model is designed to surface the insights to help teams identify patients that are at high, medium, or low risk. And we really want the clinicians to use their own clinical judgment and follow their agency's protocols and policies. We really encourage that team collaboration where the whole team gets together and they look at the care plan and they see, are we meeting the needs of the patient? We do provide a list of mediations to help guide those discussions, and we do support proactive decision making, but we really leave it up to the agencies to follow their policies and protocols.
Perfect. And what does the next, I love a future looking question, what does the next 2 to 3 years of AI innovation in home-based care look like?
You want to take that one, Kelly?
Yeah, I'm happy to take this one. Gosh, it's hard to predict because it's changing at such a rapid pace, right? I think, when large language models became more popular, there was initial concerns or fears of is this actually something that can be used within the within healthcare space, right? Do we trust these models enough? And now we're at a place where they are producing really accurate results, right? And so we're starting to integrate them, and we're starting in ways that are easily auditable, right? So manual data entry, flagging risks to clinicians, things like that. And I think that will continue to speed up. We'll see even more applications within the predictive space, right? So how can we utilize the agentic models that are coming out so it's doing actions on your behalf in a predictive manner that still has that human involved, right? I think, Michelle, you talked on this. We're always going to need that level of human judgment, that level of empathy and understanding that a large language model doesn't have, right? And so that's never going away, but I think we'll be able to see it in so many new applications that people have confidence in using. And so I think that's going to be a big change that we'll see, is that people are going to be more comfortable using it, more confident using it. And so excited to see all of the possibilities that I can't even come up with on my own because it's changing that quickly.
Perfect. And I think that's a really great note to end on. Thank you, Kelly and Michelle. And thanks to everyone for your questions. Any questions that we didn't get to will be followed up via email. And again, if you're watching on demand, still feel free to ask questions and we can get back to you. If you enjoyed this webinar and you want to share it, as a reminder, the webinar will be available on the Home Health News website. You'll also receive a link in your email that you can forward to someone you know who would enjoy this webinar. Thanks again to Kelly and Michelle. Thanks to Homecare Homebase for sponsoring this webinar. And thanks to you for attending. We hope to see you at another Home Health Care News webinar in the future.
Thank you.